First up in qualifying one, it was Jutta Kleinschmidt and Matthias Ekström for the Abt Cupra team. Now, they were pretty solid, wanted to go round, wanted to get some decent times in the bag. That's exactly what they do. You can look at the mud, though, being flung up everywhere. It's a dirty track out there, but they did a really good job of getting around this track and getting a decent time on the board.
Yeah, very wet and muddy conditions here in Dorset for the final round. Next up was a new pairing, Veloce. Lance Woolridge is in instead of Stefan Sarazan, a very experienced off-road driver from South Africa with championships to his name. And of course, Jamie Chadwick back behind the wheel after winning her second W Series title. Looking super comfortable in the car, having a pre-event test as well. And a competitive time from them.
Next up, it was the pairing for Jensen Button's team of course, Kevin Hansen and Michaela Arling-Kotelinski. Both of them doing a decent job around there, getting some nice air as well and some nice sideways motion through the puddles. The car getting a little bit bogged down and going out a little bit wider, I think, than Arling-Kotelinski would have liked. And that wasn't the first mistake that befell the team either. They had a couple of problems out there on track. You can just see the conditions really tough, but look at this moment.
Yeah, Arling-Kotelinski comes up the left-hand side of the three chutes, and that one is not within track limits. So came up, drove through the branding, and unfortunately was given a penalty for that.
Next up, it was the pairings for Andretti United of Katie Munnings and Timmy Hansen. Now, you can see the sun shining down on them for Timmy Hansen's first run. They're in a really thrilling battle for third in the championship. It's them versus JBXE. There's just 1 point in it, so they know the pressure's on them this weekend. So Munnings next behind the wheel, and in practice she couldn't quite nail that drop. She actually took too much speed in it, over-rotated and did some damage to the car. No such issues with it this time out, so much better for Munnings and Hansen, and they did a really solid job. You can see the sun shining down on those puddles.
Rosberg X Racing up next. Johan Kristoffersen with a fourth World Rallycross title to his name now, having won that series just a few weeks ago. Out track, first of all, before, of course, handing over to Molly Taylor. They have won the most events this year. They come into this round with a strong championship lead ahead of X44. But a tricky run for them as well. Super slippery conditions. And this was them actually taking out the drone. A well-aimed stone from Kristoffersen. We'd expect no less, would we, than a shot bang on target from him.
Molly Taylor getting in the car after Kristoffersen. Now, she looked really impressive around this track. Did a good job. Next up, it was the Sainz-Sainz combination. They were flying, did a really good job in practice, wanted to replicate that and get another fast time on the screen. But look at this, the door comes open. The composure for Carlos Sainz, he just reaches across. I can tell you it's not an easy thing. They're pretty heavy doors, but he managed to do that.
Yeah, great job by Sainz, wasn't it? Didn't look remotely bothered by it. Here you can see Leia Sands, eyes absolutely wide, has made a fantastic transition from bikes to cars this year and is looking more and more at home in the Odyssey 21 as the season continues.
Then it was the unluckiest team in Extreme E Racing. It was the Chip Ganassi racing team, and Carla Duke was first up. You can see the sun coming in. Then it was Sarah Price. Could they have a decent run today? Could their luck turn around? They certainly hope so. The championship hoped so.
And it was on to X44, running out of order after they'd had a problem with the inverter on the front of the car. No penalty for that because it wasn't their fault. It was due to a software update. This was Loeb over the jump, came down the side, clattered into the Continental branding. That is a part, of course, of the Continental Traction Challenge on the track there. Not too much time lost, and handing over to Cristina Gutierrez, who's won a championship herself this year, up on two wheels. But another brilliant performance from X44. They come up and cross the line to go fastest again. Are they going to take 5 top qualifiers from 5 events? The same running order for Q2 as it was for Q1, but slightly drier conditions, if you can say it's dry in the south of the UK in the middle of winter. Jutta Kleinschmidt out on track first of all, and she went the wrong way. Missed a waypoint off to the left, almost ended up in the car park. Huge water splash, and has to get the car back on track. You see her reaching up to try and shut the vent on the top of the car when she realises that's the wrong way. Look, here she goes, off to the side, makes a right through that really deep water. No time lost, but or gained even, but a 5-second penalty for missing that waypoint.
Yeah, and a lot of frustration, I think, for the team. So it was up to Ekström to go out there and make up some time. He tried his hardest, but on the back foot, and I think it's going to be a really hard task for them to get across the weekend in a better place. But good for the traction challenge with them taking the top spot.
Yeah, nice work by Ekstrom there. Jamie Chadwick off the line for Veloce. You can see it was still slippery despite it being a little drier than yesterday. This was her big moment. Stands the car absolutely on its nose as she approaches the finish on her second lap. Held onto it beautifully. Single-seater driver, say brilliant in W Series, but still learning the craft of off-road. That is a view you just don't get in a single-seater.
Yeah, not one that you want in a single-seater either. I can tell you that much. A few drivers have had it. It's an uncomfortable experience. There's Woolridge in the car as well, taking on the final lap, and he did his best to try and claw back time and put in a really nice performance for the man who's new to the championship from South Africa.
Excite Energy Racing, Christine GZ at the wheel, has improved massively in recent events, and as you can see from the bottom of the screen, was flying literally and on the timesheets as well. Huge jump by her. Great job, maybe trying to put a marker down to make sure she's got a drive next year, of course. We're approaching silly season, end of year one. Who's going to sign up these drivers for next time round?
She looks like a really handy prospect out there, and teaming up with Ollie Bennett as well. He'll want her to stay in the team, of course, because she is proving to be a really, really safe pair of hands behind that, and exciting to see what she can do next season. But the pair of them setting in a decent time, taking out a little shrub at the end, but that's no bother, wouldn't have slowed them down too much.
On to JBXE, Michaela Arlene Kotlinski, still looking really comfortable in the car, using all of the track, flying nicely as well. Real boost in confidence. She's had some great results recently in other championships as well as this, and it's just seemingly more at home. Of course, now the drivers have had some time in the car, at least they are getting used to how the Odyssey 21 feels in these rough conditions.
Yeah, you can see the conditions drying up as the cars went out there, so maybe a little bit of an advantage to go out slightly later, but windscreen wipers in full use this weekend. The first time we've really seen the teams having to use them all the time, and definitely something new, a new feature for this weekend.
Well, they're leaving them on, aren't they, through the entire run. They don't have time even to find the button. The wipers are on from start to finish. You see sometimes it's nice and dry, sometimes you end up with rubbish all over the screen. Kevin Hansen brought the car home. Good performance by them, went quickest at the time.
Next up, it was Katie Munnings and Timmy Hansen for Andretti United, and a special view for us on board where you could actually see the sparks coming off from the wheels. Really cool view, actually, to be down and dirty with the car.
Yeah, underneath the car, get an idea of what the mechanics have to deal with when the car comes back dirty. Unfortunately, it had to deal with something more, because Timmy Hansen at the end of the Continental Traction Challenge did this. Bad bounce, car runs wide, boom, into the tree at the front. The damage looks really bad. Hansen pauses for a moment, then does what all good rally and rallycross drivers do, sticks it in reverse and carries on.
Yeah, it's an ugly one, isn't it? It didn't do so much for the cosmetics of the car. Not sure how much damage it actually did fundamentally, but he did manage to get it round to the end. So frustration for Hansen, but by getting it to the end, managed to get the fastest time in the traction challenge. Could that be an extra 5 points for the team, which could be invaluable?
Yeah, big risk for a reward. This is another look at it. Bounced as he comes in. Watch this, the rear wheels are in the air just when he wants to left foot brake and rotate the car. And instead of rotating the car, he ends up burying the front end in the trees.
Well, RXR next up, and it was Molly Taylor in the car first, followed by Christopherson. Now, an interesting point, they may be leading the championship, but actually in qualifying, they've been outpaced by X44, their rivals, every single time.
Yeah, interesting tactics from them. Earlier on this year in Senegal, they took it slightly steadier in qualifying to avoid any problems. And Molly Taylor had clearly been given the brief over the first couple of laps, just bring it in somewhere nearby. She then handed over to Johan Kristoffersen, who had clearly been given a very different brief.
Yeah, he was absolutely gunning for it. Nico Rosberg watching on in the command centre, the Formula One world champion. And he was watching his man bringing this car home in the most rapid manner possible. He was absolutely flying.
He took the Continental Traction Challenge with that huge jump, which puts them at the lead of those standings. 5 crucial championship points, potentially in the battle against these guys.
But these guys were desperate to get those points back off them. They know in the championship battle it could be all important. A little bit wide there for Gutierrez. She did a decent couple of laps, though. She was fastest at this point, got a little bit sideways coming over the jump, so didn't absolutely nail it, but they were still looking impressive.
She just needed to bring that car home nice and tight on the time sheets for Sebastian Loeb to take over. She did have a crack at the Continental Traction Challenge on the first lap, and then it was Sebastian Loeb's turn. He needed to respond. They needed to steal those 5 points back from RXR. Remember, they can do it in any session, but it's much more likely in a qualifying session when you're running on your own. Loeb ran slightly wide, braked a little bit earlier, jumped a little bit less, almost ended up off the side of the road. And the net result was he was just a few tenths off nicking those points back.
So close from losing it at the end as he was going up that twin section as well, but he managed to get control of it and wasn't the only person who was struggling. This is Elias Sainz in the car, the Acciona Sainz team. Really nice jump over there. They went fastest in free practice, so we thought they could do it again. But look at this, sideways action, almost into the tree, manages to rescue it, save of the day.
Yeah, really, really good job from Sainz. It's a fairly high-speed braking zone, quite bumpy there. She has a big handful of opposite lock just to keep it out the trees. Bringing it in, she knew she'd lost a few seconds when we spoke to her in between the runs, that handing over to Carlos Sainz just a few seconds back was going to be tough. Sainz was on a full push as usual. El Matador absolutely on it, but he wasn't able to take it away from X44.
So one more car to go, and that would be Chip Ganassi Racing. And they have had nothing but bad luck in this season of racing. They wanted to turn their fortunes around, and Sarah Price went out and did an absolutely stonking first sector, fastest of anybody all weekend so far.
She did a brilliant job. Yeah, they were in P1, drifting around. You can see down 5-6, but we knew that come the end of the run, if they were within the 8-9 seconds that she was back, that they were going to go right up to the top of the table. Unfortunately for Kyle Leduc at turn 1, he realised that story was not going to unfold the way they hoped it would.
Yeah, problems for Carl Leduc with the steering, a hydraulics issue. They also forgot to take the insert out of the seat, so he was in the wrong position and they had a problem with the switch. But he then had a problem the entire time round. He had to wrestle the beast that is the Odyssey 21 with no power steering. Did a good job just to get the car to the end, to be totally honest with you. You can see the exhaustion at the end of one lap.
Here we go then, standings at the end of qualifying. X44 with their 5th top qualifier this year. An incredible record, 5 from 5. Their championship rivals RXR right behind them. Sainz and Sainz looking super quick. This has been the closest weekend so far. All to play for with the racing element of the weekend to come.